from Navy Pier in Chicago to the Superman statue in Metropolis and everything in between. We'll be hearing the stories from the troopers in their own words. The who, why, and what led them to the Illinois State Police and what they've experienced since then. Without further ado, this is Peak Beneath the Peak with your host, Chief Public Information Officer Beth Hunsdorfer and Southern Deputy PIO, Sergeant Joey Watson.
Hi, I'm Beth Hunsdorfer. I'm the Chief PIO for the Illinois State Police.
I'm Sergeant Joey Watson with the Illinois State Police Public Information Office. Today we're coming back to Peak Beneath the Peak, and we're super excited because we've got a really neat guest with us today. We have Lieutenant Colonel Margaret McGreal. Maybe can you tell us a little bit about what you do on a daily basis?
Hello, everyone. Yes. I am the Lieutenant Colonel in Division of Patrol over Support Services Command. And basically what our shop does is we support everything in patrol, such as the statewide CrimPat unit, our commercial motor vehicle unit, our motorcycle team, and then we have a whole bunch of other teams that we also have that supports patrol.
So if it's basically outside of the regular patrol duties, it falls in your shop.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, this must have been quite a year to be supporting patrol with the pandemic and civil unrest. Can you kind of tell us about some of the challenges you faced over the last year?
Yes, I can definitely say that. So for patrol, the way that I look at it is that our troopers that work the road and that are in the Division of Patrol, we could not hang up the "we're closed for the day" sign. We could not stop doing what we were doing out there. And those patrol officers had to continue working their patrols, handling accidents, making traffic stops, arresting, the subjects that they put under arrest for various crimes. They could not stop that job in order to keep our community safe. And I, throughout this whole time, not only did they have to continue their normal activities and their normal job duties as troopers working our expressways, but they also had to be cognizant of all the COVID precautions that were going on. So not only were they performing their job as normal, but they also had to do it wearing masks. They also had to do it wearing gloves. They also had to constantly hand sanitize and still be around the motoring public. Even though we were all trying to stay away from each other, they were still way in the mix of, continuing to do their jobs and keeping our community safe on the COVID side, and also just on the normal routine daily activities that they do keeping our neighborhood safe.
Well, and COVID was only part of the scenario this year for us as well. Civil unrest, obviously, was one of the huge stories that came out of 2020. How does that fall into your shop?
So, yes, Division of Patrol had a huge piece of the civil unrest. And so our shop, we handle the crowd control team for the state as well as the logistics. So all the pieces that there's a lot of behind the scenes that our shop handles for the crowd control team regarding all of the logistics and the training, just making sure that our teams are taken care of, and as well as being on site for all of those. So
that means I'm guessing we're talking about things like making sure your team is fed, making sure that your teams have a place to sleep at night, making sure your teams have clean equipment and clean uniforms.
Right? Like logistics is such a small word for a massive undertaking.
Right. I mean, all the stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. You hit it right on the head, Beth. Yes. So there's a lot of that we have to make sure that our teams are taken care of. That's our number one priority. And all of those things that you just mentioned, the food, the equipment, the lodging, those are all huge. It's a huge deal at the end of the day when they're starving after being deployed, that they're fed and that they're taken care of. So we take a lot of pride in making sure that we have everything taken care of for our troopers when they're detailed to some of the long details that we did have to, that we were a part of this in 2020 for sure. So yes, we were on site, and that requires us to be on site as well, ensuring that all of the logistics part of it is taken care of.
And I'm guessing you have to build contingencies into that. Like, what happens if somebody gets hurt? What happens if somebody gets sick? What happens? I mean, is that all part of the planning process? Like, how do you plan for such a massive undertaking?
So the planning is something that I feel the Illinois State Police, especially our division, because we've done so many large-scale critical events planning, we're very good at that. And basically how I put it, it's a meeting of the minds from the districts where the civil unrest would occur, our zone partners, our captains, on down to our troopers, our command officers, such as the colonels and the colonel. We all come together and we really talk about what needs to be done. And that, to me, is probably one of the best things that you can ask for, because all of us get together in a room or on a phone call and we, just talk it through. And before you know it, we are putting together a big plan. Everyone kind of comes together and it works out very, very well.
One of the things that strikes me thus far about your interview, maybe, is that you're very passionate. That's one of the things that is really standing. Does that come across? Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, why are you a trooper? Like, you obviously have a passion about life and what you do for a living, but why are you here? How did you become an Illinois State Police officer?
So, I would say a long time ago, probably in my teenage years.
The dark and stormy night.
Yeah, a long time ago. I had wanted to. First of all, I loved being I had several jobs growing up. So, and those jobs entailed different things, doing different things, all the time, being outside. So I found myself wanting to do something that would help the community as well as being outside and where it's not boring whatsoever. So I ended up applying to the Illinois State Police as well as other departments. And fortunately, the Illinois State Police contacted me first, and I went through the process. And before you know it, to this day, it was the best decision that I probably ever made, was joining the Illinois State Police. I couldn't have asked for a more rewarding career than the one that I currently have.
Well, let's dig down into that, because I think that it's real interesting about, can you tell us about, you mentioned some of your teenage jobs. What kind of jobs were you doing as a teenager?
So my very first job, I was in 5th grade, and I had a paper route. My brother and I, he was a year older than me, we took the paper route, and we handled the entire trailer court in which I grew up in. And I can tell you that job alone had taught me so many things about what I do today, such as just being around people and having those conversations. And I delivered the paper, and I also collected. So the collectors I would go up to the house and say, hi, I'm here to collect the money for the paper. Where my brother always wanted to be he just wanted to throw the papers. So I always like to talk to them, and I'd pet their dogs, and so I knew all about them as they were customers. And I also knew, how to, when it was most likely for them to be home. And it was kind of like you get to know them, and you get to know where they like their paper and what days you should collect the money. So that job, I had that until I was in seventh, eighth grade. And I can tell you, like, it, when I look back at it, it has taught me so many things. I had to deliver papers, or my brother and I delivered papers in the snow, in the rain. When it was really hot out, we got up before school and we delivered all the papers in the neighborhood. And I think like we really liked it. Like, it was fun. It wasn't like, oh, I got to deliver. Like, we looked forward to doing that.
What paper were you throwing? Do you remember?
Yeah, we were doing the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Tribune, and then oh my gosh, it was a community, I cannot remember the name of the paper because it's not around anymore, but it was like the community that we lived in. It was also that paper.
So you're from the Chicago area then?
Yes, I am from the southeast side of Chicago. I grew up in a little neighborhood called Hegwish, which is the most southeastern neighborhood in Chicago. And
Gotcha.
It's a smaller community, and everyone knows everyone in the community. As a matter of fact, when we would rattle off our phone numbers, all you would do is say the last four digits of the phone of the number,
Right.
and everyone knew what you were talking about.
So are you doing this back in the time where you would have to put the papers in the sleeves or tie the papers up?
Yes, that's a great question, Beth. So what we would do, our normal routine was my mom or my dad would drive us to the house where we would have to pick up the paper. I remember her name. Her name was Marge. And we would meet her in the garage, and she would give us our stack of papers, and we would bring them back to the house, and we would rubber band them. And we knew, like, all of our, we had a list. When we first started, we had the list of who we delivered to. But then, after a few weeks, you knew everyone by heart. So we would then, right, you would memorize it, and we would know if they got the two papers or the one paper. So that's exactly what we would do. And we would put it in that big white, like, bag that you would carry over your shoulder. All the papers would go in there, and we also had a small route and a big route. That's how we referred it to. We had, like, one side of the trailer court was where there were less trailers, and then the other side there was a lot more. So we had the big route and the small route that my brother and I would take turns doing each side. But I collected it for everyone because he did not want to go up to anyone's house and anyone's trailers.
So this is a bicycle route or a walking route?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was definitely. So we walked. Sometimes in the summer, like, we would ride our bike. There were times where my dad would pull us on the sled, like if it was really snowy.
Oh my goodness!
Those were some really fun days where we would put the newspapers on the sled, and then at the end of our route, my dad would pull the sled, and he would pull us home on the sled. So those were some fun times. And the thing is that I remember, like, when we first started doing this paper route, Marge would tell us, like, these people depend on this newspaper every single day, and they need this every single day. So even if I remember, like, if we were sick, my parents would go out and do the newspaper route. If there were days where we would leave, then we would have to find somebody to come and help us do to take over our job. So I remember that being such a motivator where we knew we had to do it. It was such a big responsibility for us at such a young age to know that people needed this paper in order to know what was going on in the world. To be quite frank.
Oh my God, I'm thinking you're like 10, 12 years old. Do you remember how much you got paid?
So I remember, I think we got paid like maybe $2, $2.50 an hour, like, to do the route. But then you get the tips with your when you would collect, you would get tips, you would get bonuses at Christmas. And I remember, like, how much fun it was. So when I would collect, I'd collect on different days, and, like, I wouldn't collect during the morning, so I would go out after school, but I would bring my friends with me too. So we had a blast going to people's houses and collecting. Like, I would call my one friend and say, hey, do you want to come and collect with me? And she'd say, yeah. So we would go and ride our bikes to all around the trailer court, and we would collect everyone's money that they owed for the month. And we got a lot of our money from the tips that they would leave us. And so that was, I don't quite remember what we got paid, because they gave us, like, you get so much just for doing it, but then you get to keep all of your tips. But we did have to then go to Marge and say, okay, here's the money for the newspapers. So we did have to give her a portion of that because she would purchase the newspapers.
Oh, right, yeah. So here you are, a fifth grader, all the way up to seventh grade, and you're delivering papers in the southeast suburbs of Chicago in the trailer courts. What are some of the life lessons that you brought from that experience into the state police, and how have those forged your career and its trajectory to lieutenant colonel, for goodness sakes?
So I think just that one, like that very first job that you get, and you start to really realizing like what you're going to be expected to do in your jobs, because I really feel that first job kind of paved the way for the following jobs that I had after that. And I would have to say the biggest thing was the responsibility of having to get up every single morning and go to work, the responsibility that, you did it for you did it obviously to make some extra money, but you also did it because it was something that I really enjoyed doing. I also think just the people skills. I think that, the communication skills and you got to know your customers, and then you worked your schedule around their schedule, and you made it easy for them. And I think too, like, throughout doing that, you form a sense of, what eventually you want your goals to be. You work hard. Like I would consider that it was hard work. It wasn't easy to get up every morning and go to work at that young of an age. But it instilled so many qualities, I feel, like that, especially the hard work, I would say. And then throughout the years, I always had a job. There was really never a time that I didn't have a job. I had jobs all through high school. During all this, I played sports in high school, so I would work on the weekends. I would work other, so you continue to work, and it molds you in who you are today. Same with becoming, then I became a trooper, and it's constant, I guess. You're constantly, you don't have an off switch. I feel like you're constantly on, and I want to say I feel that was from a long time ago. Throughout the years, I always feel that good work, like you put in for what you work for. You want to go out there and be the trooper on the streets. Like that was what I wanted to do. Everyone has their own career path, and the path that I chose, not everyone has chosen that, but that's okay. That's just who I am. I loved working in patrol. I've been in the Division of Patrol my entire career. I never wanted to do anything else but work patrol. I really and truly loved it. I loved being out on the street. I loved working midnight. I loved working in Chicago. My born and raised here. I loved working in the city, and I feel like that's kind of the path that I took, and I have absolutely zero regrets at all. I'm so fortunate to be where I'm at today. I really am.
Well, you mentioned that. Did your parents, where does that work ethic come from? Was that something that came from within your family or within yourself? I mean, a lot of people would, if their 10-year-old came to them today and said, I want to work a paper route, they'd be like, meh. So can you tell us about where you think that came from?
Sure. So I definitely think it came from my parents. My father, so I am, just for giggles, I am half Mexican and half Irish. My mom has, she's one of 11 children in 14 years. And my father, he has 4 brothers. So I have seen my parents work like their entire life since I can remember. They both had jobs.
I bet holidays around your house were a hoot, weren't they?
Well, I'll get to that in a second because I actually just calculated on my mom's side how many people there are, like including like nieces and nephews, spouses, cousins, and second cousins, and we're at 99 on my mom's side.
Oh my goodness!
Holy
And
moly, no wonder you're great at logistics.
and I am the oldest. I am the oldest girl. Like I'm the oldest female cousin. So my mom and dad got married pretty young. They were 19 when they got married, and I have 3 brothers. I have no sisters, and they had us very young. So neither one of them had college degrees. And I remember growing up, and I went to an all-girls high school, and I remember my mom always saying to me to get a career and to take care of myself. She always instilled that in all of us. Like she really, both my parents pushed college because they had never gone to college. And we were poor growing up. Like we did not have a lot. And my parents, my mom would work different jobs. My dad, he did work for the railroad. He was fortunate enough to stay with the railroad for Rock Island for a long time, and then he went on to Metro. But we didn't have much growing up. So I feel like my parents really pushed the college for all of us. And when, back then we applied for grants. And when I say we, I mean my brothers and I. We applied for grants, we applied for scholarships, we applied for all that to go to college. And when it was all said and done, every single one of us has a college degree, and we all paid for it ourselves because my parents couldn't. So I was still on the state police. I was still on the state police. Like I was on the state police when I wrote my last check for my the grants that I had taken, not the grants, I can't think of the word right now, but where I borrowed money, the loans, the student loans. Yeah. The student loans. Yeah. I wrote my last check. I was on the state police. So it was all those years. I wrote that last check, and I remember calling my mom and saying, I just wrote my last check for college. And we cried together because we knew what, all those years of having to pay for it yourself. And I feel like when you know those accomplishments that you do such like that, and you're doing it yourself, it speaks more volumes than anyone could have ever paid for me. Like I did it.
Oh, it means more to you, right?
It means more. And, even in high school, I remember the jobs that my siblings and I worked, we had to help our parents pay for high school. We went to private high schools, but we had to get jobs in order. I remember coming home and giving the check to my mom, but we all knew that there was no questions asked. And then my mom, when we would need money, she would obviously give us our money, but we had to help. We all had to help pay for our high school, and then obviously we knew for sure we were going to have to pay for college. But I feel like my brothers and I, we all took such great pride in that, and even now we'll still talk about it amongst ourselves. My older brother works for Granger, and he's a district sales. He does very, very well, and we'll joke and say, yeah, that paper route. It was that paper route that steered us in the right direction. And the accomplishments over the years of having to do that and having to put yourself through college, I just feel really played a role into it. Ties everything together. And it's something that I strive to for my own children, that I want them to know how it feels to have to work hard and to get things for yourself, and you're not going to get handed everything. There's going to be things that you're not going to be able to get, but you can work towards getting one day. So I just feel like the whole, I remember like those days of not having things. And then I turned around and, I like I told you earlier, we grew up in a trailer park, in a trailer court, and it's the only trailer court in the city of Chicago that we grew up in. And now this, like, moving into a house, like I'll always say to my husband, I feel like I live in a mansion because of what I grew up in, so, it's bittersweet, but I wouldn't change a thing. I would not trade it for anything. I really wouldn't. I have absolutely no regrets of any of that.
Probably the last question we would ask you, maybe, is I think one of the obviously law enforcement is a male dominated field. Like, how does being a Hispanic female in law enforcement, how has that played out in your career? Like, have you faced many challenges, and what are some of the things that you've done to overcome some of those challenges? Kind of looking at it from a recruitment perspective.
So I try to never say, like, I try to never, how can I say this? When I came on this job, I was Mimi. I was out there having fun. I was working hard. It was never, and then here, maybe this, I grew up around brothers. I had 3 brothers that truly, I was one of the boys growing up with them. I mean, I was always doing things with my brothers. And so being in a male dominated career, that it didn't really, honestly, it really never dawned on me that, I was used to being around my brothers. I was used to being around males. So, but as I had more time on the job, and I would work, like I said, I worked midnights on the Dan Ryan. Like I looked at it, I'm a trooper. I'm not the female trooper on the road. I'm a trooper. I'm just as good as you guys are out here, is kind of how I would work out there. And they saw that in me. I feel like the troopers at a very young age that I worked with on the job, they looked at me like I was one of another coworker. They would call me to come and assist them. They would call me for advice on how to handle arrests. So I took a lot of pride in that. And as far as being female, like I was who I was out there. I tried not to say like, I'm a female Hispanic, even though I am. I went out there and I maybe it was the way that I approached it. I approached it by doing what I was supposed to do out there, and trying to just do what was right all the time. And I really feel that I always did what I loved. So, for example, I did have opportunities to leave the division numerous times during my career, and I could have gone to investigations. I could have gone into other divisions. However, like I just did what I loved, and that was working the road. And over time, you never really know where that's going to take you, but you do often get advice like, hey, you need to get out of patrol, and you need to go and learn other things. But I was still learning there's so much to learn in patrol that before you know it, 12 years on the road, you've experienced so much. I mean, there's so many things that I experienced on the road that I even still felt that I could have learned more. And by staying in patrol, that just helped me be a better master sergeant, be a better lieutenant, be a better captain in patrol. And that's kind of where I put my focus on that all along the way. One other thing that I would just like to add is that I had a great mentor. I had a great mentor who was a male, who treated it was never you're a female, I'm a male. It was just I'm a trooper, and I wasn't the only one he had mentored. He mentored probably in the 30s people he had mentored over his career.
Who was that, Mimi?
That is Colonel Dave Bird.
Yeah,
is currently
we're kind of proud of him as well. So we're glad to have that name out there. Thank you.
Absolutely. He's currently our colonel in Division of Patrol, and he is a mentor to so many of us. It's pretty amazing because he has molded us. He has molded District Chicago in such a great way, and in the Illinois State Police as a whole. And I say Chicago because that's where he came up, but he had such an effect on a lot of us in Chicago where we did things the right way. And he would always say that to us on the job as very young troopers. You always want to do things the right way and do things. You always want to, when no one else is looking, you always want to have that character and do it fairly. And he instilled that in us at such a young age to always do the right thing. And I speak for several of us. We've carried that throughout our careers. So we owe a lot to him as being such a great role model and mentor to us.
But you pass that along as well, because I talk to a lot of people who say that you're their mentor. And is that an important component as you move along in your career, that you bring people, you lift people up as you move forward?
Yes, absolutely. And one word that I forgot to mention earlier in just the job is like the positive attitude. Like I feel that has carried me throughout my all of my jobs and into being an Illinois State Trooper is being positive. So yes, I feel like that mentoring all troopers is so important. And a lot of times I feel like even so being a lieutenant colonel, and I remember being a trooper and like everyone was afraid of the lieutenant colonel. Like no one wanted to approach the lieutenant colonels, no one wanted to approach the colonels. And now that I'm in this position, I always think like, but I'm still Mimi. Like I'm still who I was 23 years ago. And I think it's so important for us to mentor, and to call troopers like, hey, how are you today? Or someone who's been in an accident, how are you? And it's so important to reach out to every rank and try to mentor as much as we can, and to show them that we care about the job that they do out there. Like that's huge to me to know for troopers on the street. And I'm speaking Division of Patrol, but for those troopers to know that number one, we know what they go through on a daily basis, and that we care what they go through. So that's always so important to me to maintain that communication as much as we can in these positions and to not forget about them. I think that that's so important, to remember where you came from.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that really has a trickle down effect because eventually those troopers will go out into the communities that they serve with that same attitude and that same impact. And that really does trickle into our society. So we really appreciate you taking the time today, Mimi, and thank you for taking the time to sit down with us and share your story because it's so
much,
important.
yeah.
My name is Lieutenant Margaret McGreal, and that's my peak beneath the peak.